Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Christina, and I am a genre bending literary writer. And today is just going to be a little bit of a catch up day. We'll see how good this computer does. It's been acting up. But I'm going to try and get through it. And hopefully, this video will be halfway decent and not skip around too much. So there's not a whole lot going on. Today's St. Patrick's Day, so I got my green, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. I am a tiny bit Irish, just a little. I forget how much of a percentage it is. Um, I don't know. Maybe it's somewhere around like 10%, 5%, something like that. So, um, but anyways, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day. It's kind of cloudy and gloomy today. Looks like it's going to rain. So I'm just staying in. And my last couple videos have been kind of more on the side of just kind of general. I was talking about grad school last time. And the time before that, I was talking about a dream I had about a year ago. Sorry. So this time, it's just going to be a little general catch up. So, in case you're new here, I was working on a novel last year, and I have finished the first draft of this novel. Yay! And it is actually kind of a short novel. It probably should be better described as a novella. It's about 30,000 words right now. I am hoping to get it up to at least over 60. If I get it up over 60,000 words, so basically doubling it, I will be very, very happy. And I'm going to work on that in the next few months. I had a conversation with somebody about the popularity now of short novels. Apparently, short novels are coming back into fashion. So I'm not freaking out too much that it's only around 30K, but I would like it to be a bit heftier. And there's definitely some revision that has to take place, especially in the beginning, because I was writing and then I changed it halfway through. So I know that the beginning needs to have more scenes fleshed out. It needs to have some changes to characters that I introduced, but I think I should have added more description to them. So there are definitely places to expand. And I'm kind of going back through my grad school. Speaking of grad school, I'm kind of going back through my grad school notes of advanced revision to like how to tighten up prose, how to overwrite, how to um, make your scenes impactful so that it's more um, it's a more developed story. And it's been a while since I took that class, so I have to dig out my notes. I also have a few books on craft that I'm going to do also, reread them, especially one of my favorites, which is The Art and Craft of Novel Writing by Oakley Hall. And it's an old book. I think it was printed in the 70s, but I found it at a used bookstore and I picked it up. And it's one of those books I go back to every now and then, and I read stuff and I go, oh yeah, this is helpful. And so as old as it is, and I guess it's as old as me because I was born in the 70s, um it's still really helpful. And I think that's something to remember as a writer, is that sometimes the advice really doesn't change from age to age, from generation to generation. I recently did a little reorganizing in my bookshelves, and I came across my book of Chekhov's short stories, and I'm like, I need to go back and read some of those because I remember reading a few of them and just absolutely loving them. And I want to get back to that again, especially since while my book is sort of marinating in its little, you know, section of my computer, I want to rewrite one story, the one I finished last December. I finished a rewrite last December, but I wasn't happy with it. So I want to rewrite that one. I also want to rewrite a second story that I wrote 2 years ago, and it's been kind of sitting on ice. And also, I started a third story. So that story I'm hoping to finish today. I do have a Substack that I need to write, also a blog post, because I haven't written one this month. So I owe two to my Substack and to my blog. So I want to get those done today. But I also want to get this story done. Um, it's a experimental story. I think I would call it experimental. It's not your typical story where there's a narrator telling the story. It's definitely third person omniscient, and I don't do it a ton, but I do like third person omniscient, especially if I'm telling something that's more like a folk tale or more like a fairy tale. I do tend to adopt that voice. Although I just realizing now that I wrote a revision of a short story or an updated version of a fairy tale, and I used first person. So apparently, I don't keep to my own rules either, which I guess is a good thing because it keeps stuff interesting. Some stories speak to me and they are first person. Some stories speak to me and they are third person close. And some stories speak to me and they're third person omniscient. It just kind of depends. Although I recently went through a lot of my old um, uh, submissions for stories, especially ones that had already been accepted. And I should probably do a whole series of short stories that have been accepted, along with the one I did last fall. It's called From Journey of a Story, The Fire. But this short story was called The Universe Takes Care of Itself. And in that story, it was definitely third person omniscient. And somebody rejected it. I cannot remember who the publication was. I want to say, well, let me not say because it doesn't matter. It got accepted eventually, but I was reading through some of the rejections, and one person had written, "The story is well written, but there's no real character to latch onto until a third of the way through the story," and they didn't like that, so that's why they rejected it. And I can't do anything with that. I'm not going to change it. I love the story the way that it is. So I guess the moral here is stick to what you believe the story really is supposed to um, say, or how it's supposed to really lay out, because one person may not like it, but somebody else liked it and it got published. So you just kind of have to believe that the way that you're telling the story is the way that it's meant to be told. And for a lot of my stories, I tend to hear, yeah, hear is probably the best word. I tend to hear how the story is supposed to be told. So for this new story that I'm writing that is experimental, it's experimental not because it's third person omniscient. That's not experimental. It's more of how it's told. I don't know. Maybe experimental is not the right word. I don't know. That's such a nebulous word. It's like, oh, experimental means not typical. But that doesn't, if it's not typical, that doesn't necessarily mean it's experimental. Like, it's not equivalent in my mind, at least. I don't know. Maybe you all feel differently. But if I have a story that's told unconventionally, like, say, Fight Club, does that make it experimental? You never know the narrator's name, and he's telling the story, but he literally has split personality. So he's telling the story of observing himself in this other personality. So I don't know. I wouldn't call Fight Club experimental, but it's non-typical. Is Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, was that experimental? The narrator repeats her lifetime over and over again, but I wouldn't call that experimental. So I don't know. Something to think about. But anyways, I'm writing this new story and it's non-typical. That's what I'm going to call it, non-typical. And I'm very excited. I got sick for the first time in years in January. And so I took a bunch of NyQuil and I had this dream. and the dream is the story. And it's funny because I didn't dream in pictures. I dreamt in the voice of the story, if that makes sense. I don't know. I was on NyQuil, people. I don't know. I don't know. Except I woke up and said, "Ooh, I think that's going to be a good story." And so far, it's not bad. So we'll see how my critique group feels because they're supposed to read it next month. They may love it or they may hate it. We will see. But for anything, I'm going to give you a great story. At least I'm going to try. I'm going to try. So those are my big goals for the rest of March. And hopefully in the next week or so, I will finish this new story. I will rewrite these other two stories, and then we will dive into getting this novel into fighting shape. Because, like I said back in my goals for 2025, my goal was to get a submittable version of this book by July 1st. So we're running up against, halfway through the year, which is crazy to me. But we're running up to almost halfway through the year. So the fact that I have this first draft is good, but I need to spend, April and May and June really working on this story and, you know, basically doubling it. I don't know if I can do that in 3 months. I'm going to try. There's a lot going on, though. I mean, like I said in other videos, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. There are marches, there are protests. I live not too far from a Tesla dealership. And let me tell you something, folks are out protesting in front of Tesla, and I ain't mad at them at all. Me personally, I'm now going back into the office at least a couple times a week. We haven't started yet, though. We're supposed to start around April. So that's going to put a damper on my writing because my commute is long, y'all. It's very long. It is 2.5 hours round trip. So about an hour and 15 minutes one way. And that's if traffic is good. Yeah. If traffic sucks, it could take an hour and a half. One time it took me almost 2 hours to get home. And so I get home, I'm exhausted, I want to eat dinner and tune my brain out. And I honestly would have to get up at like 4 a.m. to write first thing in the morning. So, what I used to do when I went into the office pre COVID was I used to write on my lunch hour. I would just bring my notebook and I would write, while I was at lunch. And that worked out pretty well, but that's going to be kind of hard to do when I'm revising. Maybe I'll just print out chapters and revise chapters by hand while I'm at the office and on my break. And then I can just, make those changes over the weekend. That might be what I have to do. And you can see right there is my printer. So I do have a printer and it does still work. And so that may be what I have to do starting in April when I have to go back into the office is just like Sunday evenings, print out 2 or 3 chapters. Right now, I think I have 17 chapters, 16 or 17 chapters. So maybe print out 2 chapters and revise them while I'm at the office. Sorry. Revise them while I'm at the office and then write the days that I am home. I would work on the computer. And that may be what I have to do because you got to do what you got to do. Before, when I went into the office, I would just work on, writing in my notebook. And then on the weekends, I would just type everything up. But I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to figure out a schedule that works for me. That's kind of the weirdest thing about being a writer and being a writer that is not a full time writer. You kind of have to fit it in where you can get it in. And some days, I'm working in, the evening until like 9 o'clock. And other days, I'm working, first thing in the morning. Now that we have daylight savings, I may start getting up slightly earlier. but I already get up at like 6. So that's kind of the earliest. And now that I'm going back into the office, I'm going to have to get up at 5:30 cuz I have to be walking out the door by 6:30, 6:45. Otherwise, the school buses make me late. That's the other thing is commuting is when you commute far is that you got to time it so that you're not in the middle of the school rush either. So lots of things to think about, lots of things to think about. But I am very happy that my novel first draft is done. That's the first time in 20 years, everyone, that I have gotten a piece that is longer than say 6,000 words. I think the longest story I had written before that was something I wrote in 2011, and that was about 5,500 words. But yeah, 30,000 words is just blowing my mind that I was able to do that. But maybe this is the start of something. Maybe this is the start of me working on much longer pieces, which is not a bad thing. One comment that people always used to say to me when they read my stories was that they wish they were longer. They were like, oh, it should be longer. I want to read more. But a short story for me is done when it's done. I don't particularly want to expand short stories. So I had to think of something that was actually a long, sustainable novella, novelette, novel. And I think that Project Browning's, that's the code name for it, is the winner. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Okay, I think I have coughed my way through this long enough. And that's the catch up. That's all there is. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you like this, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to grow this channel. I probably am going to have to post a lot more videos. So expect there to be lots more videos coming. Like I said, I think I'm going to do some more Journey of a Stories about all the stories that I have published, and that should be good. And who knows, maybe eventually I will finally like figure out how to do like one of those day in my life. Although I don't know if I want y'all to see my apartment. It's full of paper and pens and books everywhere, But that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.